Why Didn't They Ask Evans? Novel summary in English. Let's begin. Bobby Jones is playing golf with Dr. Thomas in the Welsh seaside town of Marchbolt. Seeking the golf ball he hit over the cliff edge, he sees a man lying on the rocks below. The doctor says the man is fatally injured and seeks help. Bobby stays with the man, who briefly regains consciousness, and says, "Why didn't they ask Evans?" before dying. Bobby finds a photograph of a beautiful woman in the man's coat pocket, but no identification. Roger Bassington French, a stranger wearing +4s, offers to stay with the body so Bobby can play the organ at his father's church. The dead man is identified at the inquest as Alex Pritchard by his sister, Amelia Kamen. She is said to be the woman in the photograph. Bobby wonders how such a beautiful girl could become such a coarse older woman. After the inquest, Mrs. Kamen and her husband ask if Pritchard had any last words. Bobby says no, but later, when talking with his friend Lady Frances Frankie Derwent, Bobby remembers Pritchard's final words and writes to the Kamens to tell. Bobby receives and rejects an unexpected job offer from a firm in Buenos Aires. Soon afterwards, he nearly dies after drinking from a poisoned bottle of beer. The local police do not pursue this. Frankie thinks Bobby is targeted for murder. When Bobby sees the issue of the local paper with the photograph used to find Pritchard's sister, he sees that it is not the one he found in the dead man's pocket. He and Frankie realize that Bassington French swapped the photographs and that Mrs. Kamen is not related to the dead man. Bobby and Frankie trace Bassington French to Maraway Court in Hampshire, owned by Roger's brother and sister-in-law, Henry and Sylvia. They stage a car accident outside the house with the help of a doctor friend so that Frankie, feigning injury, will be invited to stay to recover. Frankie produces a newspaper cutting about the mysterious dead man. Sylvia remarks that he looks like Alan Carstairs, a traveler and big game hunter who was a friend of John Savage, a millionaire who killed himself after learning he had terminal cancer. Frankie meets two neighbors of the Bassington Frenches, Dr. Nicholson, who runs a local sanatorium, and his younger wife, Moira. Investigating in the grounds at night, Bobby encounters a woman who says that she fears for her life. She is the woman whose photograph Bobby found in the dead man's pocket. Several days later, Moira Nicholson turns up at the local inn where Bobby stays in his disguise as Frankie's chauffeur. She says her husband is trying to kill her and says she knew Alan Carstairs before her marriage to the doctor. Moira suggests that Bobby and Frankie ask Roger if he took the photograph from the body of the dead man. Roger admits that he took the photo, recognizing Moira and wanting to avoid scandal for her. Frankie leaves after Henry is found dead in his home, and interested in the will of the late John Savage, Frankie consults her family's solicitor in London and learns that Carstairs consulted him too. Savage was staying with Mr. and Mrs. Templeton when he became convinced he had cancer, although one specialist told him he was perfectly well. When he died by suicide, his will left £700,000 to the Templetons, who have apparently since left Britain. Carstairs was on their trail when he was killed. Bobby is kidnapped and Frankie is lured to the same isolated cottage by Roger. They turn the tables on him with the timely arrival of Badger B. Dawn and find a drugged Moira in the house. When the police arrive, Roger has escaped. Bobby and Frankie trace the witnesses to the signing of John Savage's will. They are the former cook and gardener of Mr. and Mrs. Templeton. Mr. Templeton is also known as Mr. Leo Kamen. The cook says that Gladys, the parlor maid, was not asked to witness the will, made the night before Savage died. Frankie realizes that the cook and gardener did not see Mr. Savage before the signing, while the parlor maid did and would have realized that it was Roger in the deathbed who wrote the will and not Mr. Savage. The parlor maid is Gladys Evans, hence the reason for Carstairs' question, why didn't they ask Evans? Tracing the parlor maid, they discover she is now the married housekeeper at Bobby's home. Carstairs was trying to find her. Returning to Wales, they find Moira, who claims she is being followed by Roger and has come to them for help. Frankie is not deceived and foils Moira's attempt to poison their coffee, realizing that Moira was Mrs. Templeton and is Roger's co-conspirator. Moira then attempts to shoot Frankie and Bobby in the cafe, but is overpowered and arrested. Several weeks later, Frankie receives a letter from Roger, posted from South America, in which he confesses to murdering Carstairs, murdering his brother, and conspiring in all of Moira's past crimes. Bobby and Frankie realize they are in love and become engaged. The end.